Yeah, apologies for not being able to stream for gosh, it's been like 2 weeks, which is horrible. But I got sick, and I'm still kind of sick because um, when I was streaming last was nearly exactly a week ago. It was Thursday. I got sick on Thursday. I started feeling it in my throat, and then I got continually like progressively worse. Okay. See, the only reason I'm streaming today and I haven't been streaming as like at all previously is all because I my sickness has only just now kind of gotten a little bit better, like good enough to actually just be like speaking without coughing every 5 seconds. See, now what was happening is I had a dry cough, right? Oh, I bet that sounds wonderful. I had a dry cough, and it would just like I would be coughing when there's like nothing to like I'm not coughing anything up. It's just coughing because I feel like it feels like coughing. It's really obnoxious. But yeah, I wanted to start off this stream. Let's see how quick I can do it, because the discourse always ends up being like super long and drawn out. But I think I can make it quick this time around. So, let me see. Okay. First on the docket, we had, let's see if this shows up properly. Hi. Oh, there we go. First on the docket here, we had a thread here, and it's the true disturbing side of antis is a lasting thread. I don't know if lasting, like it's just gonna like never-ending thread. I don't know exactly what the purpose of that is, but my intentions with responding to this, because previously I did a stream it was about a month ago. I was talking about what was I getting at in that one? The topic was about I guess you could call it a fellow who was an anti, but I wasn't so like I was making the arguments defending just like, you know, fictional creatures and shipping. Like I don't know if I would necessarily call myself a pro shipper, but I was, you know, talking about certain circumstances and how I think that particular thing was a little bit I need to fix that. I get double archer laugh in my ears every single time. But I was basically saying like sort of where I drew the line was different, and I thought that was a bit of a what's the word? Disproportionate response. But I got it was, what was the topic? On this topic, I read through a fair amount of it, and I was saying like I can understand some, like I'm kind of in the middle on this one, because this is talking about like lollies and stuff specifically, and it was getting like really in detail about it, and I was like, you know, like I do think that it's an interesting topic, to talk about like the morals of whatever particular situation, but I think that this fellow messed up, and I just wanted to point out this particular one. So it says all of these posts are meant to make out lolicons and people who ship taboo relationships as the worst, and it's even gotten to big YouTubers who know no better. I think that's pretty that's pretty bad faith. Like to know that somebody knows no better is a bit of a bizarre way to frame it, or at least a sort of an unfair way to frame it, I would say. But it says such as some ordinary gamers who compared it to him watching, quote, cartel death footage on Reddit. And I searched for this video, and I couldn't find the video that he was referring to where this quote was supposedly said. But the replies are locked And I don't think it's done in a way to like, that I'm just gonna say whatever I want to say online, but I don't want anybody else to respond to me or anything like that. But it sort of has the effect of, just take my word for it that this particular person said this particular thing. There's no clip of this video posted within the thread. There's no link to the original video where that was said. There's no context given so that I can make my own that I can get my own, make my own conclusion, get to my own conclusion on this topic. Like I can't draw my own conclusion from it because I haven't been given anything to work with. So I thought that this was a little bit dishonest. This kind of like rubbed me the wrong way. I can definitely understand like a lot of the arguments that have been made where it's like people are getting really freaked out talking about how like annoying orange and apple are minors and also literal fruits. It's kind of bizarre to say that in the same context or in the same sentence. It's like, why would you like it's like they're minors and they're fruits. It's like every single fruit on earth is a minor in the sense that it hasn't been alive for 18 years. It doesn't apply. Like these aren't conscious beings, they're fruits. It's completely fictional. And a lot of the things like because like I don't know, people, I don't know if they're pro shipper or like lolly defenders or whatever. People will say like they're just pixels on a screen. What's the big deal? It's not a real thing. It's not real. So what's your issue? And then people will dox them. And then the response is, oh, it's just pixels on a screen. Like I posted your real name and real address, but it's just pixels on a screen. It can't hurt you. And it's like, really, not very intelligent people speaking on this type of an issue where it's like, there's a big difference between like not between enjoying something in a fictional sense that makes other people uncomfortable and spreading and a violent call to action. Essentially, it's like, I found your address and I'm going to call for people to go and like find your specific where you live so that they can effectively ruin your life. And I think people just, they get really, really strange with some of these things where it's like, pick your battles, man. Like why have you thought that it's worth attempting to ruin somebody's life over, like, if you're gonna ruin somebody's life over something, like, make sure that they deserve that. And to some people, them liking something in a sense that is perfectly legal but just makes them uncomfortable, they think that they deserve to have their lives ruined over that. And I just think that people need to cool their jets about this type of thing. Because it's like, if someone's actively, endangering children in whatever way, then you have a perfectly valid reason to launch either your own investigation to find their address and then report it to police, or just to report that regardless, and then hope that whoever you reported it to is going to take that up to the next level so that they can actually be held accountable. That's a situation where somebody's actually being put in danger, right? But in this scenario, it's just strange that people will be drawing like pornography of certain things. One of these in the examples, it was basically like gore, and it's like, not my thing, but like, I don't think that just because somebody draws something that I don't personally like means that they should have their lives ruined over it. and like me personally, I'm not comfortable with a lot of the things um I think I would like to explore like one of the points that I made was that in the webcomic previous stream that I was critiquing, there was a lot of, what's the word, pearl clutching. There was frankly just a lot of pearl clutching about the types of relationships that people were interpreting in a different way than the source material. So it's like in Undertale, which was one of the examples, a human falls down into the monster world, and a monster, Toriel, takes them under her wing and takes care of them, and is trying to protect that child from the dangers, sort of as a motherly character. But it was pointed out in this particular case where people were shipping the human and Toriel together in a romantic or a sexual sense. And in this case, it wasn't making the argument in context that because it was a child and an adult that was messed up. It was taking issue at the fact that they were like essentially two different species of creature. And I took a lot of issue with that, because it's like the entire point of Undertale, like the entire message, is really that no matter what the packaging, no matter what you look like, everybody is still, of value, and we're still the same even though we don't look the same. Like as long as we've got things that we both hold dear, we can have a connection, a very valuable connection, and that is not limited by racial lines, essentially. Because the entire world of Undertale is about the monsters and the humans, and how the humans sent the monsters into exile, and they're trapped underground, and they're living under there, and they're not free, and so they very much feel like an oppressed class in that sense, simply due to what they are and not who they are. And the entire exploration down there of who these creatures are, you realize that these creatures are of value, and they would be great to have among humans. It's like we're not so different just because we look different and maybe behave a little bit differently. Like, it's just, we're not so different that we should be separate anymore or discriminate anymore. We can just treat each other as equals. So it kind of reminds me, like I was talking about in that stream, that particular situation. There were people who back in the day would I suppose it's still somewhat relevant today, where people do people oppose interracial marriage and interbreeding, quote unquote, among people of differing races, because they believe that they should remain racially pure, quote unquote, that they should only have children within their own communities, and for anybody to be together otherwise. I think that is not intelligent, not. I think that's pretty backwards to think that way. And I was equating it to that, where it's like the entire point of Undertale is that we aren't so different. Just because we look different doesn't mean that we should treat each other unkindly or not try to understand each other, because we're not really that different in the end. Hello, Notorious Rooster. So I thought it was funny. It's just like, well, you don't think that that a monster in the context of Undertale, that a monster and a human could ever love each other. And it's like, well, it's kind of funny because the monsters don't all look the exact same. There are different sort of phenotypical appearances or species of monsters in that world that are together. You have a lesbian couple between Alphys and Fish Lady Undyne, and it's like one of them is like a triceratops and the other is like a funny fish woman, and they're together, and they're also both female. It's about like, love is not limited to, or at least understanding or anything, but in this case, love is not limited to the body. It's all about the connection that these people have, these creatures have. So it's kind of funny because it's like they were taking issue with that ship because it was a two different species, and I'm like, I find that to be very short-sighted. But it's interesting to sort of to link it back into this. It's like, what was the point that I was going to make? To wrap this one up in a bow. It's just, people get really high and mighty, I think, about things that don't really matter, especially in the terms of a fictional universe where the first thing I see on Trent, like I just glance down here and it says Non-Stop Nut November. Man. Anyway, people take things a little too seriously when it comes to fictional characters and their ability to be together. It's like, especially in the context of Undertale, where these characters, like, the entire point is like, hey, we look different, but we're not so different that we can't, like, love each other in whatever way. But that's right. I was saying, you are going to take issue with people who ship these characters together outside of the context of their original universe. But you're not going to call out when the universe itself does something that you would deem problematic, such as, and the example that was specifically there was the Shota character. Actually, wasn't that his name in Dragon Maid? His name was Shota. And his dragon friend is a fully grown woman, who was actually an Aztec god previously. So she's thousands of years old, and in her culture is considered to be an adult, considered to be mature, and she is taking advantage of and being extremely sexual around a child. He's like 8 years old or something, and he's not comfortable with it. Even if he was appearing to be comfortable with it, he can't possibly comprehend what he's doing with her because she is an adult and he is not. And it's like that in the context of its own world is like that I would consider to be like it's literal grooming in that within universe it's grooming, and people don't really take issue with that, or at least in this particular case it was taking issue with people shipping characters together. It's like, but the original source material was shipping those characters together. It's a canon relationship that they have, that somebody in the industry decided that they would take these characters, write these characters and write them into the scenarios where an adult character is taking advantage of a child character, but our issue is with the people who are shipping those two characters. Look, it happens in universe. Like, shouldn't we be concerned that we have two children, one of them who is thousands of years old, who's supposedly like not a child, but she said it canonically within the context of that universe that in her culture she is still a child, even if she is to a human way too old to be a child. She's still not mature enough to comprehend things. But we have a literal like kindergarten age human child doing things in a very compromising and sexualized scenario with a character who is also a child. It's like someone animated that, and I don't think that that's I find that to be pretty incredibly uncomfortable to have that to be like a sort of situation that it's like someone greenlit this. Someone said, "Oh yeah, no, it's perfectly fine to animate this. It's perfectly like that." I'm not totally comfortable with that, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I think that the person should never be able to like live a peaceful life without like I don't think that you should be swatted because you watched it and enjoyed it, or that you defend it, or whatever it is. I just think that it's definitely a culturally sus thing that they find it to be okay in that studio. Sort of, I guess, suppose on a microculture type of deal. It's just like if you think it's okay to sexualize an animated child, does that necessarily mean that it is okay to that you also think, is that indicative of you having a bigger propensity to do that sort of thing in real life? Does that mean you're in actual danger? This particular thread claims at some point that that there are studies. I believe it claims that there are studies that you can't, that there is no correlation between like enjoying quote unquote lolly content and actually being a pedophile. I haven't like, that remains to be seen for me. Like, I don't know if that's actually something that people can prove correlation or causation with, because like, it's been proven time and again that video games don't make you violent, but it absolutely is true that violent people can use video games as a source of inspiration. But frankly, those violent people would do that anyway. So like I probably shouldn't talk about like school shooters, but yeah, Florida Parkland shooter, he played a fair amount of Call of Duty, and then that was documented on a YouTube channel that he had where he was playing Call of Duty, and he said that he was going to shoot up a school. Nobody did anything about it. But the FBI will take down videos of people talking about it, and make it impossible for people like Mumkey Jones to have a living, even when he's actively critiquing certain domestic terrorist attacks. I don't know. It's a little bit bizarre. I don't really understand why exactly. I don't like government interference on things that should just be considered freedom of speech. Oh, okay, that was a lag spike. But regardless, I did want to explore a little bit about this, but I basically said my piece. I just think if you are going to throw any particular, like, throw a name out there and try and throw them under the bus, then it's important that you actually cite your source for that, because that's due diligence, and I want to be able to, like, I literally searched for the video, and I didn't know what the video was titled, I didn't know what the video was about, but apparently he said this, and I just have to take your word for it that he said this, and I don't have a video or additional context to the original clip itself of him saying this. I have nothing to go off of, so I think that that's definitely dishonest. But have I been in a VC with Mutahar before? I'm trying to remember. I may have at like one point. I'm not gonna like claim that I know him or anything. It's like clearly I don't. But like, it would be kind of funny if the only way for me to find that video is ask, hey, do you remember this statement being said by you and what the context was, or can you just link me the video where you said that? Like that might be the only way that I can find it, or I just have to like find somebody who views the channel and ask about it, which, I mean, I don't know. It just bothers me that people sort of refuse to be honest about such a thing. But I think I basically said my piece on that. I had another little bit of discourse that I wanted to have, a little bit of a rationalizing a position. I hate this stupid tracker. Like, I don't know what causes it to do this. I think it needs to go further, and I think I have to reposition it, but like I can't do that with the way that my setup is. I was going to briefly mention, I've consolidated my situation, because I briefly sort of mentioned Godzilla and how hot Godzilla is, but I've got my old 1060 back in Godzilla. I've got, I swapped the motherboard, the platform, and everything. I've got a RAM upgrade coming in, because I did want more than 16 gigs of DDR3 in that, but now it's nice and cool, and it's perfectly capable of, right now I'm actually running my my Live 2D, my stuff off of that, so, and it's recording, and it's got everything going, so it's all set up, and it's cool, and it's quiet, and it's not totally bothering me. Of course, the fan isn't as quiet, but that's more of the situation of the room. I've just sorted things out, so I don't have the other PC over here. I've got to sell that one, but I've consolidated things, and it feels satisfying to do that. I kept busy over the amount of time that I was sick, too sick to stream at least. But yeah, I had another video here, and I don't know how long it's going to take me to address this one. I downloaded the video. Come on, VLC, give me the goods here. Come on, VLC.
Does this guy?
Shut up. Okay. Okay. There we go. So I have the original. I've got the original like Instagram upload here, but just because it's easier to scrub around in, I wanted to play it in VLC. Does it really need an introduction? I suppose not. I guess I'll just get right into it. And hopefully, this is 1 minute video. We'll see how far I end up stretching it out into. It might take some time to respond to, but this video bothered me a little bit.
Does this guy ever address the misandry of women toward actual boys? So glad you asked, because yes, I do. I frequently point out that what you and others call misandry is actually an effect of misogyny.
So it's interesting what this account, what the comment that he's responding to is saying is, hey, you ever gonna address, that young boys, and I've seen this on social media all the time, where young boys are targeted simply because of their gender, their sex, that, like, what's the type of thing that I've seen? I've seen, like, women say, I think actually that's like a famous tweet, like someone had some sort of a screenshot that said, going to go find out if my baby is a girl or an abortion, where it's like, I'm pregnant, and if it's a male, then I'm going to kill it, which is, nice, but that is judging an unborn child, and their ability to, and not just unborn children. I think that there are many situations where women will target infant or toddlers, their own children, males or other people's children, who just simply because they're male, they're judging them for the actions of other males. And what this man is about to attempt to do is to justify this unfair treatment of taking somebody who is who hasn't done literally anything, a completely innocent person who's not even born yet, taking them and judging them for the actions of other people who've been on this earth for a long time, have done evil things themselves because they are actually guilty, and judging someone who could not be more innocent, could literally not be more innocent. And he's going to justify that because it's okay to mistreat these people. It's okay to have these attitudes about males because other males have behaved in a negative, in a bad way. He's going to try to attempt to justify judging or joking, saying it's okay to kill a child. Well, I mean, joking, quote unquote joking. I believe a fair amount of these women when they say that they're actually willing to kill a child if it is male. It's pretty horrible stuff, but I believe them that they're gonna do that because there are some people who really truly hate males for existing, and that's the reason why people are asking. It's just like, hey, you ever gonna address that? I think it's a fair question to ask. You ever gonna address when it's the other way around? And I think the reason why that's asked is to see if they have a blind spot. And I think this video proved very much that the person that we're dealing with here, the creator of this video, has immense tunnel vision, has a perception that's entirely built off of frankly a warped perception of reality, where everything goes back to the fact that men are bad and that there's nothing that you can do about it. It's always the fault of men, and women can never be wrong. I think that at his core, this man believes that, and any attempt that he will make to rationalize or justify in the opposite is just dishonest. Frankly, it's like if you're going to be honest with everyone, and if you're going to be honest with yourself, you should just say that you think that women can never be wrong. And I'd at least be able to respect the intellectual consistency, if not still be to be pretty disgusted with that type of thing. Hello, Dirk, and I'm looking. Just want to say gas. Welcome, Base Gym Rat. So let's see what he has to say.
Take, for instance, the requirement that many women have that the men they date have to be over 6 feet tall.
So first of all, the comment said boys. He said boys, not men, but boys, meaning children who are male. At least that's the way that I'm interpreting. Clearly, he didn't interpret it in that way. I don't think he interpreted it in that way as a way to be dishonest. I think he interpreted it in that way because this is how he goes about justifying things. Is he has to go to a level and assume the position of somebody else. Perhaps they could have been more specific, but it's like literal child males are blamed because they are male, because women or other people, not just women, but anybody who has seen certain males doing bad things, decided that this is how males are just destined to be. Men are always bad. That they're so obsessed with sort of the man-hating culture, I suppose, that they end up blaming them. That's what that comment was talking about. Misandry directed towards boys. But the requirement to be over 6 feet tall, like that has to do with either teenagers who are trying to getting into the sort of the dating scene, or adults who are trying to have relationships. This is not answering the question that was asked. It's just going to some different level, because it's easier to argue that It's like, oh, you're gonna say that women having preferences is a is misandry, is a bad thing. Women aren't allowed to have preferences. Well, that's not fair. And it's like, that's not what was said at all. They're talking about actual, like, children being judged for the actions of other people. And I don't, the entire concept of misandry is that men are being judged by the actions of other men unfairly. It's like, hey, I didn't do anything, but I'm being judged for the actions of others. That's not okay. But he can't comprehend that because he doesn't think that exists. He doesn't think that women can be wrong, and he doesn't think that men can make up for the mistakes of other men. I actually don't believe men can make up for the mistakes of other men, but I don't think they have to. I think he thinks he does. I think he thinks that they do have to make up for the mistakes of other men. I believe that men must be punished for their own sins, believe it or not. You know, like, don't judge me for something somebody else did. Judge me for what I did and what I didn't do. But I don't think he believes in that. And the reason I think that is because how he conducts himself just in this video. I haven't even seen any of his other videos, but I think it's very telling. If you want to get a gauge for what somebody's focuses, priorities, and biases especially are, ask them this question: hey, is it okay if you flip the roles here? And if they say it's not okay when a woman is being mistreated, but it is okay when a man is being mistreated in the exact same way, then you've kind of discovered that they've got a bit of a double standard there.
That comes from patriarchy.
It comes from patriarchy. I don't even think that women having preferences is necessarily something bad. Like if women want a tall guy because it makes them feel safe or whatever it may be, if they just find that attractive and whatever, hey, preferences, you know. But to say that you want a guy who's 6 foot tall or otherwise, you're going to cut your chances significantly by doing that. It's like, hey, there are a lot of men who are under 6 feet that might still be able to give. It's like, you know, you kind of have to pick your battles. Is it really that high of a priority? I don't know, but I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with having that preference. But he is going to blame women having that preference, not on women for having that preference, or in the way that they deal with having that preference, the way that they treat men due to them having that preference. He is going to blame that on men again. On this fictitious, bizarre concept of the patriarchy. Is the patriarchy with us? Is it in the room? Is it in the room with us?
Is actually an effect of misogyny. Take, for instance, the requirement. Does this and others call misandry is actually an effect of misogyny?
So, first of all, women hating men, it's not because of men. Or it's not because of women having their own issues. It's because men made women hate men. It's not okay when we say that. What's the video? What's the meme? No woman ever apologized to me for making me a misogynist. It's like, that's not okay to say. But for women, men made me hate men. It's not my fault. Again, I'm as an egalitarian, I just think you should judge people for their actions as individuals, believe it or not. I don't think you should judge me for the behavior of other people, and I don't think that other people, you know, individual cases, because everybody's different. But
take, for instance, the requirement that many women have that the men they date have to be over 6 feet tall. That comes from patriarchy, from associating being tall with masculinity and short with being feminine.
And that's men's fault, apparently. I don't think it's men's fault. I think it's just the way that things ended up. If anything, women are just as responsible for that perception as men are. It's like being tall is masculine, being short is feminine. That perception comes from a lot of different things. It's not just because of the patriarchy. I think the concept of the patriarchy is a bit of a boogeyman that people will use as a way to try and pinpoint, they need a scapegoat. You know, it's like they need some way to rationalize what they don't understand, and the easiest way for them to do it is to label and dismiss. So it's like, why is there this negative perception that affects me in a negative way? Well, it's because of the patriarchy. Yes, this concept that definitely exists and isn't just like some sort of a bizarre attempt at rationalizing what I don't understand in a nuanced way. It's like, hey, you actually don't have a very nuanced perspective of what life is, of what society is, believe it or not. And I know that sounds real high and mighty, but I genuinely think anybody who thinks that the concept of the patriarchy that exists as this, you know, organization, it's like, do you also believe in the Illuminati? Like, not even just in the sense that it's an organization or some sort of an active thing, like sort of shown in like the Barbie movie where it's like, oh, every single man is just wishing that we had, like, it's like, no, it doesn't exist. You have a warped perception. Frankly, you may be mentally ill. Talk to a therapist. It's not the fault of every single man colluding together to make everything one way or another. It's just the way that things ended up, believe it or not. You know, it's like, men being, you know, tall and women being short. I think there's a biological reason why that perception exists. I think there's a biological reason why men like shorter women, like being the taller one, why women like being the shorter one. I think that there's a lot of reasons behind that this doesn't even, it's like, this is what this social theory gives you, is not any sort of a well crafted good explanation of why things ended up that way. It's just like, it's just hand waving. That's what it seems like to me. Hand waving. It's just like, it's just the patriarchy, because everything's about the patriarchy. And I think that's what you see in people who think this way, is it's just everything is defined by this one concept of the patriarchy. It's all the patriarchy's fault. And I think, what's the word? It's sort of postmodernism, I suppose, where it's like everything is caused by this thing. And it's just like, when that thing that you're talking about doesn't even exist, and actually if you had a more nuanced perspective on life and society, then maybe you wouldn't blame everything on that. Like,
and within patriarchy, we devalue the feminine, which is why it is undesirable for men to be short.
I think that message is far less empowering than the way that it actually is, which is, there are many reasons why people behave the way that they behave, but at the end of the day, it's you aren't going to have to look over your shoulder for this boogeyman every waking moment. Like, turns out most people are probably gonna turn out fine. You know, men or women, it's like you maybe that's just unrealistically optimistic, but hey, it's not empowering. It's not empowering to tell women that we are in a patriarchy, and the way that we exist as a patriarchy is to devalue everything feminine. I don't, not only do I think that that's not true, but I think that is not a good thing to be telling people. Even if it was true, the message really should always be focused on, you know, hold your head high and do all you can and be the best person that you can possibly be, and hope that I guess good karma reaches you in the end, you know? Hope for the best, be as best as you can be, and then hope for the best in return. And I think that you'd be pleasantly surprised that things are gonna go pretty well for you. If anybody's treating you poorly, then don't let them do it. Like, you know, just sort of to always have this perspective that women are devalued inherently. and this affects both men and women, but it's mostly men's fault because we exist in a patriarchy where men are in power. And it's just like, be realistic. Like, this is not happening. Like point to actual evidence that creates, you know, can you prove causation, you know? Is the reason why women like being shorter than men, or women like tall men and men like short women, or whatever it is the reason behind that because men collectively decided to collude together to remain in power, quote unquote, and that they've been in power and they're going to be in power forever, and you can't do anything about it, and so the only thing that you should do is to mope around and be mad that it exists, and that things are just that way, or is, you know, changes nature, you know? Would it not be better for us to be more optimistic about this type of thing? Because I don't even think the problem that he says exists in the way that he says it exists. It's like, you know, women have that requirement, and there are plenty of women who have a lot of requirements that are silly and ask too much of men, and vice versa. Men ask too much of women. But the only thing that I can really conclude in any particular situation is, hey, that guy's being a bit of a dick. That woman, bit of a bitch, because she's being unrealistic and she's treating men poorly, in a way that is unfair, or vice versa. It's like that's the only thing that I can conclude is that person messed up and did something that I don't think is correct. But I can't take any given like situation and just apply it to the entire world, all of society in general, or just all of America, or really anything, because I'm just taking a pinprick of anecdotal evidence and being like, you know, that is definitely reflective of every single man on earth. Because one man is bad, every single man, whether or not they're, every single person with a Y chromosome, whether or not they're literally in the womb, or a child, or a 58-year-old man, like every single one of them is just destined to be bad. It's like, you know, if I say that to them, they're going to deny that they believe that. But the way that they behave is like, I don't know, could have fooled me. You say you don't behave that way, but the way that you behave, kind of, actions speak louder than words, as they say.
Femininity is bad. That's misogyny. Or take the complaint that women clearly have privilege in the workforce because all of the most dangerous, lethal jobs are largely performed by men. And that's because those fields have operated like a boys' club for so long.
It's just so rich. It's just so rich. They operated like a boys' club. No. Do you think that women want to be in a coal mine? Do you think that that most women would love to be down there shoveling shit in like in a septic tank? Like, be for real. They operate like a boys' club. They wouldn't accept women being. Women can't be welders. They don't. Yes, they can. Anybody who wants to go in and do something can do it, barring certain physical limitations. But they don't operate as no dangerous field job operates as a boys' club and wouldn't accept women if they were capable of the work. But fair amounts of these work, first of all, most women don't want to do. Believe it or not, this is why the wage gap has been debunked a billion times, and people still bitch about it. It pisses me off. Like, women don't prefer jobs on statistically that make a lot of money, and that's why statistically on average women don't make as much money, is because they take jobs, or God forbid that they're homemakers and they have children, and that's what they've decided that their career is going to be. Doesn't pay much. In fact, it pays negatively, but sort of the backbone of society in a way. It's a job that somebody's got to do. So like, you know, God forbid women actually do what they want, because we don't want equal opportunity. We want equity. We don't want equality. We want equity. We want equal outcome. And that's the thing. Equal opportunity will never guarantee equal outcome. And people have to accept that. And I think it's ridiculous to even want equal outcome in the first place. We need just as many rich black people as white people. We mean just as many successful women as successful men. We mean just as many. Well, why? Why should we put people into those positions if they don't work to earn it? Why should we attempt to make sure that every single amount of like racial outlook of a school is completely equal? Like, what if there are some people who just happened not to even try to go out for that school in the first place? You know? Why should we see, you know, a coal mine with 50% men and 50% women all throughout? Like, why should we see that? Why is that a morally good thing to have complete equality? Because there are lots of, believe it or not, nuanced things, lots of very complicated variables, billions of variables to consider for each individual person as to what they want to do with their life. And it turns out that on average, women don't want to be in a coal mine. And most likely, on average, women aren't even capable to work in a coal mine in the first place. Not because of misogyny, not because it's a boys' club, but because they can't shovel as much and they're not as productive. It's like, hey, in a meritocracy, if you can't do the work, then you don't get the position and you don't get paid to do it. And there's nobody to blame for that. It's just the way that biologically things have happened. On average, women are not as strong as men. And barring some biological anomalies, or single-digit cases, that tends to be the case where women are statistically not as strong as men. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't think there is anything wrong with things just ending up the way that they are. If it were different, then that would be okay as well. If women were just as willing and just as capable as, on average, as men to be in whatever position that they wanted to be in, then I wouldn't have any problem whatsoever with women absolutely dominating that field if they wanted to. You know, if it started to swing the other way where tons of women, because they just ended up becoming superpowered or whatever, could perform far greater at whatever skill, marketable skill it is, then it's like I don't have a problem with that at all. Like, there's just not the way that things have been, not because anybody's stopping them, except for, biology. Dawn, Mother Nature. She's trying to keep the woman down. It's like, well, no. It's a boys' club. When you think that, when you're in so deep that you think that the reason women don't want to be risking their lives to make money is not because they want to live, or not because they would prefer to do something that they personally enjoy more, or not because they, aren't even physically capable in the first place of performing back-breaking work continuously, and to be able to perform, up to that workload that men on average are able to perform. No, it's none of those things, not even in consideration. The entire reason is because they've been held back by the patriarchy. Is Mother Nature part of the patriarchy too? Is Mother Nature with, it's picking and choosing? Oh, the men get denser muscles, and their muscles are a lot easier to grow than women. Is Mother Nature part of the patriarchy too? Like, it's just ridiculous when when your entire worldview revolves around something that is just your inability to have a nuanced perspective, like, you just end up blaming things on, you blame everything on something that doesn't exist. And that causes you to have massive double standards at treating people differently because of your tainted perspective, your warped, tainted, frankly disgusting worldview. Not disgusting because it's, a position to hold, that the position inherently is disgusting, but because you are selling people a lie and treating people differently because you believe that lie yourself. It's like pretty morally bankrupt, I think, to treat people poorly because you believe something that isn't true, and to teach other people to attempt as much as you can to rationalize something that's completely irrational, that spits in the face of science, spits in the face of reality, in order to, confirm your own bias about these types of things. I'm going to treat people worse because of the way that I believe. It's like, very nice, man. Very morally good on you. It's just frustrating.
The only reason women aren't working in those fields is because men won't allow them to.
I suppose Mother Nature is a man. I suppose Mother Nature being, the one calling the shots on women having more body fat percentage because of, the design of the female body. Guess that's part of the patriarchy as well. It's just, he clearly has never actually thought about this or had anybody teach him about this. It's like, hey, sorry that the, funny dragon on YouTube has to be the first person to publicly say, hey, you kind of forgot about biology. You kind of forgot that men and women are different, and that there's nothing wrong with that, and there's to a certain degree nothing that we can do about that. Men and women are different, and it'd be fine if they weren't as different. But I think that we have to accept that as reality, that men will never be women and vice versa. And that biologically there are a couple differences. But if a woman could have the muscle density, could have the stamina, could do the work that men can do in these fields, I don't think a single man in that situation, well, maybe, I don't know, I don't control whether or not men would, think that women have no place in doing that. But I think that if you are capable of doing the work, there's nothing within the system in and of itself, that would prevent her from doing that work. Because legally speaking, hey, if she's capable, and if she's not a problem in the workforce, and she's doing, maybe she's outperforming them, it's like no one's going to prevent her from doing that. And if they do, then I'm on her side. But first of all, I don't think most women want to be in a coal mine. I don't think most women want to be sewage workers or welders or whatever else, truckers, whatever. But if they do, and if they're capable of doing it, then nobody stops them. And if they do stop them, well, I don't think anybody, I would be hard, I think that you would be hard pressed to find somebody who actively is acting to try and make sure that they cannot have a career in a field that they are perfectly qualified to be in. I think that that's pretty behind us as a culture and as a society, frankly. Because, what's the name? Supreme Court Justice. For some reason, I was thinking of a replacement, Amy Coney Barrett. What is her name? Velma dressed up as her in the Scoob movie. Not Bryce Dallas Howard. My brain, my actual brain. What's the name? Yeah, it's Supreme. Oh, that's a face. What's the name? I'm literally looking at a picture of a face. Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I don't know why my brain actually struggled so hard with that. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I think, is an example of, you know, back in the day, that's the way that it was. Women are not fit to be making arguments in the courtroom as you know, judges, or mitigating cases as lawyers. Or it's just not a place for a woman to be. And then, but it's like she proved herself by being as good at the job as she possibly could be, as well principled as she possibly could be, and she ended up changing everybody's perspective on that by proving them wrong. And I think that there's a lot to be praised in that, and I think that there's a lot that we're going to lose if we try to assume that that is still the case when those perceptions have been, because you're going to judge people. You're going to go in feeling anxious that you were going to be discriminated against in one way or another, and it's just going to end up causing you a lot of grief that, frankly, if you could just relax. And I don't know, I'm maybe just too much of an optimist, but, you know, screw it. Like, just hope for the best, see what happens, and take it on the chin if somebody's gonna mistreat you. But if you go around with this paranoid attitude, thinking that you being completely capable, you're still going to be held down by some amorphous, faceless being that just doesn't want you, for whatever reason, to be happy and successful in life, then it's like, how much are you going to achieve when you're living in fear of that? Because even if it was the case, and back when it was the case, then, you know, people were bold about, you know, people like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, people like Martin Luther King. They were bold about challenging the status quo when it served to harm their ability to be successful and to be happy. But I think we have a lot to be grateful for in how far we've come from when the status quo used to be that way, that I really don't think that we have that much to worry about, and take everything by a case-to-case basis. If we ever have anything to worry about, let's address it. But I don't think that this is a realistic thing to be worrying about. It's like, hey, maybe women will biologically evolve to be, to level the playing field, okay, to make it so that they're just as capable as men in some of these fields, or maybe they're going to prefer those fields culturally or psychologically, whatever it is that prevents them from going into those fields that isn't a, you know, an actual barrier of, you know, physical limitations. But, like, should we be ungrateful? You know, pull the women of America and ask them, you know, do you want to be a sewage worker? Do you want to be a welder? Do you want to be whatever else? And she's like, hey, what women prefer to be doing with their lives, if they want to be doing that with their lives, who are we to shame them for doing that? It's like, if they don't want to have a successful career as a CEO, then why should we clamor to find a woman who does want that and to try and give it to her? It's like, if a woman wants that, she's going to work her tail off to get it, and she's going to deserve it. If she doesn't want it, then she's not going to pursue it. Like, why do we have to assume that's going to be, you know, the way that things are going to be? Like, it's unfortunate that, you know, equal opportunity is barred to us per our biological differences to a certain degree. Like, I think that it is sort of unfair that men and women are different, and therefore they do warrant a certain amount of different treatment in certain situations. But I think that at the same time, there's a lot to be gained from those differences. In the sense that, you know, men being protective of women comes out of them being different and not sort of on average being able to protect themselves. And I think that women tend to appreciate that, and men tend to like being useful in that way as to protect them, to protect women. Those instincts don't come from the patriarchy. They a lot of them are biological, the need to protect women, and even the negative instincts. You know, the instincts to be sexually aggressive, for example, and to, you know, attack women in or assault women in whatever way. It's like those come from biological. It's like, I think we should overcome negative behaviors that are bad, obviously, understanding where they come from being mostly biological. We have to control, we have to bridle, and perhaps to stamp out a certain amount of those behaviors. Understanding where they come from helps us to do that in a lot more of an effective way. But when it comes to the good instincts that are useful, I think we should be able to embrace them. Of course, we should be controlling them as well, and understanding when we're out of line with those in whatever situation they may be. But I think we throw the baby out with the bathwater with this sort of an attitude where it's like men and women aren't different. Men just prevent women from being the same. No. We are different, and that's a morally neutral thing. It's not a good thing or a bad thing. They're just consequences due to those differences, and we shouldn't blame anybody who's not responsible for that for, you know, just having to respond to that being a thing in the first place. It's nobody's fault. But, you know, back to the warped perceptions here. None of that nuance factors in. It's just a boys' club. Men don't. It's just I keep returning. It's just so silly. It's so utterly laughable. I don't know.
So again, another problem created by misogyny,
and not by Mother Nature. Nobody did that, but men hating women. But it's not the women's fault that they don't want to, you know, be in a dangerous position. It's not their fault at all. I don't think it's their fault necessarily. I don't think there's anything wrong with having a preference against a certain type of a job. But you have to understand that preference exists. And it may exist for a reason. But if you're like this guy who has no nuanced perspective and a warped perspective, in fact, on everything, then you can't factor that in. Everything goes back to this scapegoat. Like, it's like, because you don't understand the world, and this is human nature, because you don't understand something, you have to simplify it. And I think this simplification in this case is just not morally acceptable. The way that you are simplifying this topic is harmful actively. Because this is the way you lead your life. You can't take accountability for the things that you are guilty of. And you're teaching other people that they need to take accountability of the things that they are not guilty of. And it's like, this is the way you live your life. It's morally bankrupt.
A lot of women still expect men to pay for the first date. Why? Because of the gender wage gap.
Which doesn't exist. Which does not exist. It's a statistic. On average, women make less money than men. Why do women make less money than men on average? It's because the fields that women decide to work in, a lot of them deciding to work in motherhood, don't pay as much, turns out. They don't get paid 71 cents on the dollar on the stupid statistic that's always cited. A woman working in the exact same position of a man and completing the exact same amount of work or hours, or they're going to receive the exact same salary because they are doing the same work and achieving the same value. But if a woman decided to be an artist and her success in that field hasn't paid a salary of a different field. The different fields, believe it or not, pay different because there are different amounts of value that are put on those services that are provided in those fields. And women, on average, tend to choose, on average, fields that don't pay as much as the fields that men tend to go into. If there's a female CEO and a company's doing really well, guess what? She's gonna have a lot of income. She's gonna have the exact same amount of income as if she was a man. That journey may have been very different because being a different gender does, because you are different, define a certain amount of what your life entails, but that's a morally neutral thing. It's like women expect men to pay for the first date, or pay for the dates, or do whatever because of the gender wage gap. Well, okay, well, hold on. If that didn't exist, let's say hypothetically, Ben Shapiro, if that didn't exist, what other reason is it? Because you're gonna have to prove to me that exists before I'm on board with that excuse.
Allow them to. So again, another problem created by misogyny.
So dishonest.
A lot of women still expect men to pay for the first date. Why? Because of the gender wage gap and the gender income gap. Men are still making more money than women.
Men are still deciding to enter into career paths and into fields and doing work that is deemed more valuable to society than what women tend to decide to do. Isn't that messed up? I don't think it's a good thing or a bad thing that it's just the way that it is. Why? Whose fault is this? Who are we going to blame for this? That women aren't, that more women don't want to be CEOs, or that there aren't more women who are starting their own companies, putting in a ton of their own work into starting a company. God forbid, more women tend to feel more validated starting a family and allowing their husband to be the breadwinner. I'm perfectly fine if a woman wanted to be the breadwinner and the man wanted to be the stay at home and to take that role. I don't have a problem with that. I don't know if other people have a problem with that. That's their issue if they have a problem with that. But on average, that's not the way that it tends to be. Men earn more money than women on average, because on average, men tend to choose more successful career paths. There's nothing stopping a woman, barring specific physical limitations that biologically women have, to do something that society deems more valuable, that she will get paid more for and have a more successful career because of what she is doing. Nothing's stopping them. And in fact, there are a lot of things that women on average tend to be more successful at men. Women are better marks women, whatever the term. They shoot better. They've got better aim. They tend to be sharper in that sense. Women make fantastic detectives. I think they make pretty shrewd, pretty sharp lawyers, actually. And in fact, we were talking about a certain judge, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who proved that women have very much of a place in the courtroom, wherever that place may be. It's like there's, lawyers make a lot of money. If you wanted to be a lawyer, anybody stopping you from being a lawyer? Not after Ruth Bader Ginsburg, kind of proved that within that industry. She proved that she, at least, if not all women who wanted to be as shrewd and be as daring and as bold as she was, could do it. Perfectly capable of providing that service. But because they don't statistically do that, it's like I for the last year worked in a year, 2 years, whatever it was. I worked in food, and doesn't pay well. It's even if you work up the ladder to try and become to get into a better position, to try and advance in that career, it doesn't pay well, and I think it's pretty miserable. I don't enjoy doing that work. And I haven't, found a way to monetize any of the other things that I actually am passionate for. Haven't found a whole lot of success in that way. But, you know, my partner happens to be female. She kind of actually makes more money than me because she's working at a different location in the same field, doing pretty much the same work, same customer service, food preparation work that I was doing for that amount of time, and gets paid more. Actually, when I swapped over to doing maintenance, still she's getting paid more for doing essentially the same thing that I was doing. And that's you know, inequity, but it's not inequality, because I could just as easily swap careers, swap locations, swap whatever I need to try and get a better rate, to try and get a salary, to try and do whatever, you know, to advance my career and to be making more money. But it's like, you know, two people who are not making a lot of money, and who in fact are you know, struggling in a lot of the same ways. That expectation to always be, you know, paying like, it's just funny when it's like, what about the people who aren't affected by that? But he doesn't care about individuals, he cares about the collective. He cares about why is the collective, and you know, I've spoken in the past about my hatred for collectivism, but it's just like, why isn't everybody reflecting, you know, I don't want to call people low IQ, but I feel like it's low IQ behavior to just look at a massive collective of people and to be like, why isn't everybody in the exact same predicament? Why isn't everybody making the exact same amount of money? It's just like, hey, it's kind of based off of what people are providing, you know. It's like, are you providing a valuable service that people are willing to pay through the nose in order for you to provide that service for them? No? Then why are you mad that you're not making a lot of money? Like, go and do something more valuable with your time, and perhaps you'll see that you're gonna be more successful. Go and take a risk to start a business. Go and do something rather than just sitting around complaining that you don't make 15 an hour flipping burgers. Like, go and do something else. Like, why do we have this expectation that everybody needs to be doing just as well as other people who've provided a service? There's like, everybody's mad that they don't have Jeff Bezos money, but nobody else is willing to provide the service that Amazon provides, and everybody is subscribing to it because it's such a useful, valuable service. It's like, hey, turns out that maybe he kind of deserves a certain amount of that money because he kind of is providing something that you refuse to stop using because it's that useful. Just because it's so useful doesn't mean that it's a human right either. It's like, hey, we got the technology that we got, like, you know, running electricity and phones and all of those things, but we've got Amazon. I can what does Randy Feltface say? They've designed the algorithms to be so efficient that the moment that I think that I perhaps want a certain product, it comes smashing in through my window. It's like, it's this fast that we have everything happening. But if it's like, that's the technology, that's a blessing that people who have innovated have created. They've created an ability with infrastructure and everything to be able to efficiently provide a very efficient, useful, amazing service. You know, just because I love, you know, building computers and I find them incredibly useful doesn't mean that it's a human right for me to have one regardless of availability. If I went back in time before they even invented them, then I'd be pissed out of luck, believe it or not. You know, if I went back in time to the caveman times, I'd be pissed out of luck for wanting, you know, free, not free, but potable water in pipes to a home that is insulated with air conditioning. It's like, I probably have to build my own house because nobody's going to do it for me. It's like, but nobody's stopping me. That's the important thing about a privilege versus a right, is a right, nobody can stop you from trying to do something. It's part of the reason why in the Constitution it's life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, because they can't guarantee happiness. The founding fathers knew they couldn't guarantee happiness. Nobody can guarantee happiness, believe it or not. So it's like, you can pursue happiness in whatever way that you believe is going to successfully work out for you. And if anybody's going to try and stop you from that, then that's more or less a violation of rights. But it is more of a privilege to have, shelter, to have running water. The purification process that goes down in this country to be able to get purified water running through plumbing served to every single house, and that water is more pure, is up to a higher standard than the water in bottles that you can buy in bulk. Those are less pure than the water that we get out of our tap every single day, barring certain issues with the system that is actually like serving every single house. It's like, hey, you gotta make sure you've got your pipes, your piping is fine and whatnot. But it's like, hey, just because it's something that you have now that you're accustomed to doesn't mean that if it wasn't a thing you had anymore, you still deserve it. Because the only reason you have it is because someone's worked to invent, to innovate, to lay the foundation to actually create what you've got. And unless you have something to barter for that, unless you've got something of value, be it, money, which is just literal like value that we affix to things to pay for that, or literally a service or good to trade for that, then you're going to be pissed out of luck. It's like, hey, not everybody deserves shelter. And if somebody's giving you free shelter, you better be damn grateful for it. Like, not everybody deserves a career. And if somebody is finding your... at least you can claim that, though, right? Like the services that you provide, somebody is willing to pay you whatever they are willing to pay you for it, then it's like, better be grateful for that, because you could have nobody who wants to pay you for it. It's like, we're so spoiled in Western society. We're sitting here complaining that women don't make as much money as men because, believe it or not, they're allowed to decide to pursue happiness in the way that they want, and they're not going to be forced, in a Marxist society. Every single thing that you can do of value is at the exact same level. Communist society, it's like the guy who's flipping the burger is going to be paid the exact same as the guy who owns the company of burgers. Like, or the guy who puts in the work to feed the cows. Like, you really think innovation happens any other way? We're sitting here complaining about women being allowed to decide, or just people being allowed to decide, and just the way that it ending up. Men decided that they were going to work in things that make more money on average than what women decided to do, which is still of value, but they don't tend to get paid as much because it's deemed of less monetary value. We don't pay the backbone of society as a career. To be a mother, to be a homemaker, we don't pay, to go through that. But it is of incredible value. But that's the wage gap. Anyway, let's move on.
And why? Misogyny.
No, it's because of a billion other different variables that your tiny pea brain doesn't have the ability to comprehend, because everything goes back to that.
Pay for the first date.
It's
Why?
just,
Because of the gender wage gap and the
which
gender
isn't real,
income gap.
which
Men
isn't
are
real,
still making more money than women. And
which
why?
is true,
Misogyny.
which is
now,
not the
you
case.
And I might not.
It's just like the only thing about that, the only true thing about that is that men on average tend to make more money than women. The average income of a man is greater than the average income of a woman. It's because of misogyny. It's because women have other things to do that they want to do with their lives. Like, stop being stupid. Stop being so obtuse. So tired of this. How many times has nobody ever confronted you? Have you never had a sit down discussion with somebody being like, hey, what about a mother? What about her who, doesn't actively provide a service to make money, who's, the man is providing, he's the breadwinner, and the woman is staying at home taking care of the kids. That's the service that she provides. And that's what she enjoys doing, perhaps. I would be willing to bet that the majority of women enjoy being mothers, and probably among different generations that it's going to differ, but he doesn't think that it's okay, and actually he doesn't even think that he doesn't even comprehend that that's a thing that exists. Like, I'm just sick of it.
Why? Because of the gender wage gap and the gender
doesn't exist.
income gap.
Doesn't
Men are
exist.
still making more money than women.
On average,
and why?
yes.
Misogyny. Now, you and I might not be directly, specifically responsible for this ourselves.
Nobody's responsible for it. Nobody's directly responsible for that average showing up that way, except for the individual people who end up contributing to that average. And it turns out that both men and women who decide to do what they want to do with their lives are contributing to that statistic, and there is nothing wrong with that. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. Why don't we look at the amount of people who are homeless? What about suicides? Let's talk about statistics here. What about suicides? What about the fact that the men on average account for the significant disproportionate amount of suicides as compared to women? What about that? What about that? None of us are contributing to that ourselves. There's nothing that we specifically as individuals can do about that. But I wonder why that's the case. Like what about it? Does that mean that society is designed to crush men until they have nothing left? Like, probably not. Like, I can't prove that statistically, and I'm not going to make an attempt to, because I don't believe that that's the case. But what about that? What about the amount of homeless men versus the amount of homeless women? I've never looked up the statistic, but I'd be willing to bet that it doesn't favor men. I wonder why that is. Social ostracism tends to be far greater in men. I wonder why that's the case. I wonder why the incel phenomenon happened in the first place. I wonder if we can have a discussion about that in a way that doesn't demean men for existing. I wonder.
But what you call misandry, we have only ourselves collectively.
Collectively, it's that word. It's that word. We have only ourselves collectively. I think that that's true, that everybody contributes in one way or another, but I don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing. But when it's women treating men poorly, it's everybody's fault. When it's men treating women poorly, it's men's fault. Interesting. Almost seems like you have a bit of an unfair double standard, and that you should maybe rethink your entire perception of society and life as it exists.
We have only men.
See, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Because we have only ourselves collectively. It's not even that. It's not when women treat men poorly, it's everybody's fault. It's still men's fault. It's all men's fault when women treat men poorly. It's never women's fault. With people like this.
Specifically responsible for this ourselves. But what you call misandry,
Yeah.
we have only ourselves collectively. We have only men, patriarchy, to blame. Does this guy ever...
It's just obtuse. It's just plain old insane and stupid. We have only ourselves collectively to blame. Men, not ourselves. No, I'm not going to include women in sharing the blame for anything. Women are never responsible for anything. That can you actually can you blame me for thinking that this is the way that he thinks, or this is the way that people who say these things and make these arguments think? Where it's we have only ourselves collectively as men, only men to blame. Like let's think about this a little bit more. Turns out that humans are complicated, and trying to address any amount of individuals, in any amount of problems that are experienced as a part of the human condition, as a group, those efforts will fail continuously. Because if you view them as a group and give them their give them their medicine, distribute that to them as a group, you will fail universally every single time. Because everybody is different. Every individual is different, and everybody requires something just a little bit different for their specific situation. And I think treating it as a collective problem is already a very bad place to start. But treating it as a collective problem where only one collective can ever take accountability and responsibility for any action is a horrible place to... It's an even worse place to start out from. Not only is it can we not look at any individual experience, any particular case, and God forbid take things at a take issues at an individual level. Not only can we not do that, but when people are responsible for mistreating people, it's never their fault. And this is the thing, if you go into an individualistic perspective with this sort of a topic, you take a woman with her child, treats her male child very poorly, wanted to abort it because it was a male, wanted to kill him because it was a male, but couldn't do that for whatever reason, or decided not to for whatever reason. Woman in that situation decides to treat that male poorly because he's got a Y chromosome. And I've had poor treatment by other individuals with Y chromosomes, so this one must be no different, even though I'm the one who's teaching him. She's actively teaching him to have mommy issues, you know? It's like he hasn't done anything. And she is absolutely in the wrong. It's like just because she has been mistreated in a way that was not acceptable. You know, she was whatever it may be. She was she had some sort of a negative experience, that there was someone who did something wrong to her. Just because someone did something wrong to you doesn't mean it's okay to treat other people poorly. That's universal. That applies to men and women in whatever predicament that they're in. And just because that happens to you doesn't mean that it is morally permissible to treat others poorly who had nothing to do with it because of it. But he can't or people who think this way can't engage at that level, can't comprehend that. It's got to be all about what was done to them, rather than any amount of guilt that they have over their own actions. You can't control anybody else but yourself. So why do we have to blame others for our own actions? You are the one who did the action. Can we agree that these things are negative? And can we take accountability for the actions that we actually took, rather than it being somebody else's fault at all times? I think that this is indicative of a phenomenon, I suppose, culturally, of people who just never grew up, really. People who were never taught to take accountability. It's not about what I did wrong. It's about why I did what I did because of what others did to me. It's not my fault that I decided to behave in this way. It's the fault of the person who taught me. I am what the world caused me to be, and I will never rise above and be better than what is expected of me. Because if they expect me to just... if they taught me to be afraid of men, then I'm going to react in fear and anger to every single man that I meet, irregardless of their own actions that they took. You can't just rise above that and realize that you are treating people and punishing them for the sins of others. You can't rise above and be better than that basic instinct. Like, come on. It's a big issue of accountability. And clearly it bothers me a lot. That, you know, that there are plenty of women out there who cannot take accountability for the things that they do. And there are plenty of men out there like this man who disgracefully enable that behavior. You can never be responsible for yourself. Somebody else is always responsible for the bad that you do. But everybody should be grateful for the good that you do. That's just a childish way of thinking. And I'm pretty sick of it, frankly. Okay. Now that that's done and over with, wow, hour 40. See, it's not the worst I've ever done, but I always, you know, have to take things to such a significant level here. It seems I've got to go so complicated with it every time.